He spoke like the site was his kingdom, and Harold Moses was just another brick in the wall. Gregory Lane, a young engineer with polished shoes and a sharper tongue, believed titles earned the right to humiliate. And Harold? Just a middle-aged foreman with calloused hands and quiet eyes. Gregory mocked him in front of dozens, dismissed his concerns, laughed at his voice. But when they picked Harold Moses to belittle, they didn't know who they were messing with. They didn't know Harold was the founder and CEO of the very company Gregory claimed to control. And what came next wasn't just justice. It was a reckoning built on every ounce of dignity denied to working men like him. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because the story you're about to hear isn't just about one man. It's about all of us. Sunlight filtered through the dusty beams of the construction site, casting long, quiet shadows across the foundation. Somewhere beneath it, a truth was rising, and this time it would not be ignored. The morning sun cast long shadows over the steel skeleton of what would soon become the city's tallest office tower. The site buzzed with motion. Hard hats, clipboards, shouted instructions. But it all stopped the moment Gregory Lane spoke. "Let's keep the bricklayers out of the calculations, shall we?" His voice sliced through the air like the edge of a shovel. "This is engineering, not intuition." Everyone turned. All eyes settled on one man standing still near the blueprint board, Harold Moses, a broad-shouldered black foreman with 20 years of concrete under his nails and wisdom etched into every line of his weathered face. Harold had dared to speak, just once. Just a question about the east footing and how water from last week's storm might affect the slope. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't made demands. Just a quiet observation grounded in decades of hands-on experience. But Gregory Lane, the site's new structural consultant, straight from a prestigious firm and wearing loafers that had never seen a muddy ditch, smirked and raised an eyebrow. "You build walls, Harold. Leave the thinking to those of us with degrees." A few nervous chuckles followed. Some younger engineers looked down. Others, like the assistant project manager, exchanged small, smug glances. Harold didn't flinch. He simply folded his arms and nodded slowly. "As you wish, sir." But something flickered behind his eyes. Calm, not rage. A steady stillness, like someone watching a storm gather from the safety of a well-built porch. How would you feel if that were you? Dismissed, disrespected, in front of every man and woman you work beside. Silence followed the insult, thick and heavy like wet concrete before it sets. The meeting moved on, the moment buried under charts and schedules. But a crack had formed, not in the foundation of the building, but in something deeper. And, like any true builder knows, a crack left unattended always grows. Gregory Lane's polished Italian shoes clicked across the gravel path as he strutted through the construction site, barking orders like a man conducting a symphony he didn't understand. The plans were tight, the budget tighter, and the tower, his first major project with executive eyes watching, had to rise on schedule. Any voice that wavered from the script was unwelcome, especially Harold's. "You're still on about that foundation concern?" Gregory asked later that afternoon, catching Harold reviewing the topography map. "Let it go. Water drains, earth settles, the structure's solid." Harold didn't raise his voice. "I've seen this land flood twice in 10 years. If we don't anchor the northeast footings deeper, the pressure might split the concrete by winter." Gregory chuckled, flipping open his tablet. "This isn't your backyard, Moses. We're building a high-rise, not a garden shed." This time the laughter came louder from the new site techs, the junior engineers eager to stay in favor. Harold felt it again, that sting, sharp but familiar. It wasn't just arrogance anymore. It was a message. "You don't belong here." He stood silent for a moment, the late sun warming his back, not because he lacked words, but because he was choosing which ones mattered. "It's not about who's right," Harold finally said. "It's about what's safe." But Gregory had already turned away. "Tell me, have you ever watched someone ignore a warning, knowing the cost will come too late?" That night, Harold sat alone on the edge of the scaffolding, staring into the dark. He could feel the weight of the project pressing down, not from the concrete, but from the quiet erosion of respect. Somewhere deep beneath the site, something was shifting, and it wasn't just the soil. He reached for his phone, typed a message, and pressed send. Sometimes, you don't need to raise your voice. You just need to know the right moment to speak. By noon the next day, tension pulsed through the site like a low electrical current. Workers whispered. The site manager rushed to rearrange chairs. Gregory Lane adjusted his cufflinks twice in 3 minutes. A message had come down from the top. The company's owner would arrive for an unscheduled inspection. Unusual, alarming. Then the black sedan pulled up. Out stepped a tall man in a charcoal suit, his frame strong, his presence undeniable. The crowd hushed. Gregory stepped forward, all charm and polish. "Welcome, sir. I didn't expect—" But he stopped mid-sentence. His eyes met the visitors. Recognition dawned, and horror. Harold Moses stood before him, not in dusty work boots and flannel, but in a tailored suit, briefcase in hand, and a small pin on his lapel bearing the company's insignia. "I believe the name you're looking for," Harold said, voice even, "is Harold Abraham Moses, founder and CEO of Ham Constructors." The silence hit harder than any shout. Engineers froze, foremen stared. The laughter from yesterday turned to ash in the mouths of those who had joined in. Gregory's face drained of color. "You? You never said?" "I didn't have to." Harold glanced around the site, then back at the man who had ridiculed him. "You made it clear how you treat those you think are beneath you. Have you ever misjudged someone so completely that you didn't just embarrass them, but revealed something shameful about yourself?" The mood shifted. Some workers began nodding. Others exchanged glances that said more than words. No one stepped forward to defend Gregory, not this time. Harold's calm cut sharper than any insult. "Let's take a walk. There's something I'd like to discuss about the Northeast Foundation." And as the two men disappeared into the trailer, the other stood silent, humbled by a truth they hadn't seen coming. Because sometimes, the man in overalls is also the one who signs your check. Inside the cool, fluorescent-lit conference trailer, Harold laid a folder gently on the table. The engineers sat like statues, rigid, pale, waiting. Across from them, Gregory Lane shifted in his chair, his usual confidence hollowed out. Harold opened the folder. 17 code violations, unauthorized substitutions, false reporting. All under your name. Gregory sputtered. "This is a setup." "It's a review," Harold cut in, calm as ever, "conducted by our safety auditors within the last 6 hours. Prompted by your resistance to a Foundation concern that turned out to be dangerously valid." A hush fell. Then a quiet voice spoke from the corner of the room. "Jessica, a junior structural engineer. We raised these concerns. He overruled them. Said delays would cost us our bonuses." That's when it hit. This wasn't just arrogance. It was negligence, fueled by greed. What would you have done sitting in Harold's chair? Extend mercy or let the weight of justice fall? Harold didn't raise his voice. He simply slid 2 documents across the table. Option 1, termination for cause, legal action, your license suspended. Gregory paled. Option 2, you return all bonus pay, then volunteer 6 months teaching structural basics to underprivileged youth. You have 5 minutes to decide. He stood, walked to the door, and paused. Respect isn't granted by title, Greg. It's earned through listening and knowing you're not the smartest man in every room. Outside, workers had begun to gather. The whisper of what was unfolding inside had reached every level of the site. No one jeered. No one smirked. They just waited. Gregory sat motionless, sweat glistening under his collar. Harold looked back one last time. The foundation of every building is hidden beneath the surface. So is character, but one always reveals the other. And with that, he stepped outside, where consequences were no longer theoretical. They were being built, in real time, one lesson at a time. 6 months passed. The tower rose high above the skyline, its steel bones gleaming in the winter light. On the 32nd floor, Harold Moses stood by the window, arms crossed, watching a crane lift the final beam into place. The foundation, once in question, tested and unshaken. But the real shift had happened below. In a modest training center at the base of the building, Gregory Lane now wore jeans and a flannel shirt. No tie, no title. Chalk dust streaked his sleeves as he explained sheer force to a room full of young men and women, many of them from communities society rarely invested in. He paused mid-lesson when Harold entered. The room hushed, but Harold simply nodded. "Continue." Gregory swallowed, then turned back to the board. "So, when force exceeds design, what happens?" A girl in the front row raised her hand. "It fails, unless the base is strong enough." Gregory smiled faintly. "Exactly." Later, in the lot, Harold approached as Gregory loaded diagrams into his old hatchback. No more leather seats, no chauffeur, just a man, who had, perhaps, seen himself more clearly. "I thought this would feel like punishment," Gregory said. "Teaching kids who've never touched calculus." Harold tilted his head. "But they ask better questions than some of my engineers ever did. And they listen. Can a man truly change when stripped of everything but the chance to begin again?" Harold studied him for a long moment. "You staying?" Gregory nodded. "Another semester. Maybe longer. There's one girl here, Maria. She's got it. Sharp instincts. Like someone else I misjudged." A small, knowing silence settled between them. Not friendship, but respect. As Harold walked away, he glanced back once. "We don't just build towers here, Greg. We build second chances. Because sometimes the most important structure we ever repair is the one inside ourselves. True respect is not earned by status or education. It is earned through humility, listening, and the courage to value every voice, no matter where it comes from." In life, we're often taught to look up to titles, to degrees, to polished shoes behind big desks. But wisdom doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it shows up in quiet hands that have worked long days, in voices that speak gently but see clearly. The story of Harold Moses reminds us that real strength lies in how we treat people when we think no one is watching. It's easy to admire those in power. Harder but more meaningful is to honor those who carry the weight of the world in silence. Have you ever overlooked someone, only to realize later how much they had to teach you? As we grow older, we come to see that dignity doesn't come from being loud. It comes from knowing who we are and standing steady, even when others don't see our worth. And sometimes, when given a second chance, even those who once caused harm can find a better path. In a world that rushes to judge, let's be the ones who pause, listen, and build something stronger. Together, in the quiet of a late afternoon, Harold Moses walked the edge of the construction site. Not as a man seeking applause, but as one who had laid something far stronger than concrete. Dignity, patience, truth. No cheers followed him, but every step echoed a kind of quiet power, the kind that survives humiliation, chooses compassion, and still stands tall. The tower now touched the clouds, but the true rebuilding had begun below, in the minds that had learned to listen, and in the hearts that had learned to see. Justice in this story wasn't loud. It was steady. And the echoes of that moment, of prejudice exposed and respect reclaimed, will not be forgotten. If this story stayed with you, share it. Subscribe to Echoes of Racism so these voices don't fade into silence. In the meantime, I've chosen 2 stories I think will move you just as much. Take care, and we'll see you soon.